I don't know if it'll happen, but I really hope it does. Someone proposed to us, an artist, to do a bronze statue of Robin and permanently put it there. You can go sit next to him, which I think is the coolest idea.
For nearly 3 decades, Matt Damon has been searching for the right way to say something about Robin Williams that he could not quite say at 27.
Robin would open the door and come out, and he'd find this letter. And I was right next to Gus, next to the camera, and I would say, because we wanted him to, as if he was hearing my voice. He just takes a moment and he realizes that I'm gone. And in true Robin fashion, we did 60 takes.
He has tried in interviews, in podcasts, in commencement speeches, and in quiet visits to a park bench in Boston. On a recent night in San Francisco, surrounded by Robin's own children, Matt Damon finally found the words he had been looking for. The night at Fort Mason. Bring Change to Mind held its 15th anniversary celebration at the Fort Mason Center for Arts and Culture, and the room was sold out by the time the curtains went up. The organization was raising money for mental health programs that have grown into a national network of student clubs, public service announcements that have reached billions, and a research partnership with Indiana University that has changed how schools talk about mental illness in the United States. But the centerpiece of the evening was a single award. The 9th Robin Williams Legacy of Laughter Award was about to be handed to 2 men who had spent nearly 30 years trying to find the right way to say thank you. The men who would do the handing were Robin Williams' 3 children, Zach, Zelda, and Cody, who had been presenting this award every year since the foundation created it. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck walked out together wearing San Francisco Giants caps. For 2 die-hard Boston Red Sox fans, this was somewhere between a costume and a confession. Damon explained the reason within seconds of taking the microphone, telling the audience that this was the first time in 55 years he had ever worn the colors of a rival team, and that he was doing it for Robin, who had loved San Francisco the way most people only love a person. The night raised $2.5 million for mental health programs. Glenn Close had founded Bring Change to Mind back in 2010, after her sister Jessie had told her one day that she could not stop thinking about killing herself. Jessie was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and Glenn's nephew Kalen was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. The whole organization grew out of that one terrible conversation, out of Glenn deciding she would rather build something than lose someone. Robin Williams had been one of her earliest supporters. When he died in 2014, his son Zach became the chairman of the very board his father had once championed. So when Zach, Zelda, and Cody walked onto that stage on the night of April 27, what they were carrying was more than a glass trophy. They were carrying a story that began in a Cambridge bedroom in 1980. And the only people in the world qualified to finish that story were standing right in front of them in baseball caps. 2 boys from 2 blocks apart. Long before any of them were stars, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were just 2 kids whose mothers introduced them in a Cambridge neighborhood in the year 1980. Matt was 8 and small for his age. Ben was 10 and already taller than most boys his year. They lived 2 blocks apart, and from the moment they met, something locked into place between them that would never really come apart again. Matt had been raised by a mother who taught early childhood education at Lesley University, in a famous 6-family communal house in Central Square, after his parents separated when he was about 2 years old. Ben came from a similar bohemian Cambridge household. Their mothers were friends. Their interests aligned almost immediately, and within a few years the boys had started telling everyone who would listen that they wanted to be actors. By the time they hit Cambridge Rindage and Latin School, they were inseparable, and they were also being mocked. The cool kids called them drama geeks. They didn't care. They opened a joint bank account together, choosing as their secret password the name River, in honor of River Phoenix, who they believed at the time was the greatest young actor on earth. Whatever money they earned from small jobs went into that account, and the rule was that the money could only be spent on bus tickets, train tickets, and the occasional flight from Boston to New York for auditions. Both Matt and Ben got their first taste of being on a real movie set when they were extras together on Field of Dreams in 1989. Kevin Costner, who had no reason to remember them, remembered them anyway. He recalled later how the two boys would lean in at the same time, lean back at the same time, and look at each other at the same time, like they had been performing together their whole lives. He said they were on fire with enthusiasm and that he could already tell something was coming for them. Matt enrolled at Harvard University in 1988 as an English major. His parents had hoped he would settle into something traditional. But Matt kept skipping classes for auditions, and he kept feeling the pull of a story he had not yet figured out how to tell. During his final year, in a playwriting course, he turned in something that was supposed to be a one-act play. What he handed in instead was a 40-page script about a young janitor in South Boston who happened to be a mathematical genius. He showed it to Ben. Ben read it. Both of them looked at each other and understood, without having to say it out loud, that this was the thing they had been waiting their whole adolescence for. Matt dropped out of Harvard 12 credits short of his degree. The two friends moved to Los Angeles together, and that is when their education really started. 5 years of being told no. The script began as something nobody would recognize today. The original draft was an action thriller. The brilliant young janitor was being hunted by the National Security Agency, and his townie friends were helping him outrun the federal government across the streets of Boston. Ben Affleck has admitted in interviews that they wrote it the way two friends in their early 20s write anything, which is to say they would buy 6 or 12 beers, talk into a tape recorder for hours, and somehow end up with pages. Their agent, Patrick Whitesell, shopped it around town. Castle Rock Entertainment bought it for around $675,000. Rob Reiner read the script and gave them blunt advice, telling them the action thriller part was a mistake, and that the heart of the movie was the relationship between the boy and his therapist. The legendary script doctor William Goldman agreed. Matt and Ben cut roughly 60 pages of NSA storyline out of their draft, and the script began to look like the movie we know. But the studios did not stop saying no. They said no for so long that Matt and Ben started to wonder if anyone was actually reading their drafts anymore. So they ran a test. They started inserting deliberately outrageous scenes into the script, including some that were sexual and inappropriate, just to see if anyone would mention them. Nobody did. Not a single executive flagged a single one of those scenes for years. It was confirmation that the people deciding their fate were not even reading the pages. When Castle Rock decided to choose an obscure director and replace Matt and Ben with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead roles, the boys refused. Castle Rock put the script into a 30-day turnaround period and gave them a deadline. Either they bought the script back for $1 million, or they lost both the script and their roles forever. Matt and Ben spent those 30 days going from studio to studio, walking into every office that had ever bid on the project, and according to Matt, every single one of them took the meeting just to tell them to go away. The man who finally saved the project was Kevin Smith. The director of Mallrats and Chasing Amy had become friendly with Ben, and when Ben handed him the script in panic, Smith walked into Miramax that same week and told Harvey Weinstein to drop everything and read it. Within 24 hours, Weinstein bought the script from Castle Rock for $1 million and agreed to let Matt and Ben star in their own movie. The first thing Weinstein noticed when he read the script was the inserted oral sex scenes. He flagged them immediately. Matt and Ben finally had their proof. He was the only executive in the history of the project who had actually read what they had written. They removed the test scenes, exhaled for the first time in 5 years, and started the search for a director and a co-star who could carry the emotional center of their story. Mel Gibson took a meeting. Michael Mann screen-tested the duo but disagreed about tone. Ben Stiller passed because he did not want two unknowns headlining the picture. The man who eventually got the directing job was Gus Van Sant, whose work on Drugstore Cowboy had electrified both Matt and Ben years earlier. Van Sant said yes. Now, they only needed one more thing. They needed someone to play the therapist, Sean Maguire, and the entire emotional weight of their movie was going to rest on whoever they cast. That casting decision would almost not happen. And the way it finally happened would change the entire trajectory of two careers. The man who said yes. Robin Williams first heard about Good Will Hunting through Francis Ford Coppola, who had directed him in Jack the year before. Coppola told Robin there was a script floating around Hollywood that he should read. Then Gus Van Sant got the pages directly into Robin's hands, and Robin sat down with them, and he read the entire script in a single sitting. The next morning, he called and said yes. The math of what Robin did next is something that needs to be understood properly to appreciate it. At the time he attached himself to the project, Robin Williams was commanding around $20 million per movie. He was one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. For Good Will Hunting, he agreed to take a salary of around $5 million instead, and in return, he negotiated a back-end participation deal. Once the movie crossed $60 million at the box office, he would start receiving an escalating percentage of the profits, with another bump waiting for him at $100 million. The Miramax executives congratulated themselves on getting Robin Williams cheaply. Then the movie came out. It made $225 million worldwide. Robin had quietly written himself one of the smartest contracts in modern Hollywood history. Matt has talked about this on podcasts more than once, and every time he tells it, you can hear the same affection in his voice. Robin had read the same script everyone else had read. The difference was that Robin had understood what the movie was actually worth, and the studio had not. But the money is not what moves Matt when he tells the story. What moves him is something that happened on the very first day of filming, before a single dollar was earned. Matt and Ben were not actually scheduled to work that day. They came to set anyway. They sat off to the side of the camera and watched Robin run through his lines for the very first time. Matt has described what he felt in that moment more times than he can count. After 5 years of rejection, after 5 years of being told that nobody would ever care about a janitor from South Boston, the most beloved actor in America was now standing on a set, saying their words out loud. By the time Gus Van Sant called for action, Matt was crying so hard the tears were running off his chin. When the scene ended, Robin walked over to where Matt and Ben were sitting. He saw their faces. He understood completely what they were feeling, because he had once been a young performer too, and he knew what it meant to spend years being told you were nothing. He put one hand on Matt's head and one hand on Ben's head, and he said 5 words that Matt has carried with him for the rest of his adult life. He said, "It is not a fluke." He said, "You guys really did this." He said, "You really did it." What happened across the rest of the production would deepen Matt's understanding of who Robin Williams really was, and one specific scene would leave the entire crew unable to breathe. A set like no other. The first thing everyone on the production noticed about Robin was that he had memorized the entire script before filming even began. He arrived knowing every line, not just his own, and he treated each take as a chance to find something the script had not already told him. Gus Van Sant has said that Robin would push to do 10 or 12 takes when most actors would have stopped at 3, because he wanted a fast version, a slow version, a happy version, a sad version, a funny version, and a version with no humor in it at all. The Swedish actor Stellan Skarsgård, who played the math professor Lambo, made a different kind of observation about Robin. He noticed that when Robin was alone with 1 or 2 people, he was calm and gentle and could talk seriously about anything. The moment a 3rd or 4th person entered the room, Robin would launch into character work almost as a survival reflex. Skarsgård came to believe Robin had developed that habit early in his life, when humor had been the only safe currency he could offer the world. There is a scene in Robin's office where Sean Maguire is telling young Will about his late wife. Robin completely abandoned the script in the middle of one take. He started telling a story that he had invented on the spot, about how his character's wife used to pass gas in her sleep so loudly that one night the dog woke up, and how when she asked him if it had been her, he had loved her too much to admit the truth. The moment Robin landed the punchline, the entire crew began laughing so hard that the camera operator started shaking. You can still see the camera shake in the final cut of the film because that take is the one that ended up in the movie. Matt has told another story that he loves even more. There is a moment near the end of Good Will Hunting where Sean reads a letter that Will has left for him. Robin had to film himself reading that letter and walking back into his house. Matt remembers that they did around 20 takes of it. On one of those takes, Robin folded the letter, put it back in the mailbox, and as he walked toward the front door, he muttered 5 words that nobody had written down. He said, "Son of a bitch stole my line." Then he disappeared into the house. Matt grabbed Gus Van Sant by the shoulders the moment they cut. He could not believe what Robin had just done. 5 improvised words had given the movie its perfect closing beat, and that line is the one that closes Good Will Hunting to this day. Matt likes to say that Robin wrote the last line of their movie. Then there was the bench, the famous park bench scene where Sean tells Will, "It is not your fault," repeating the words over and over until Will finally collapses into them, was filmed at the Boston Public Garden. Matt has said that watching Robin film that scene for the first time was the moment he understood that something special was happening. He had only 1 or 2 lines in the entire scene. The rest of it belonged completely to Robin, and Robin owned every single second of it. There was something else Robin would do throughout the production. In the middle of a long shooting day, when the energy of the cast and crew started to flag, Robin would stand up unprompted and begin doing 15 minutes of original stand-up comedy. He would pull crew members into his bits by name. He would mock the lighting guys, the sound guys, the makeup artists, all of them with affection, all of them bursting into laughter. The crew would walk away from those private 15-minute sets and come back to work with something restored in them. Matt has called those sessions the best stand-up he has ever seen, and he has noted that Robin did them only for the people who were tired, and only because he could see they needed it. When the whole production wrapped and the movie was released a year later, what happened on Oscar night would surprise even the people who had believed in Good Will Hunting from the very beginning. The speech and the statue. The 70th Academy Awards were held on the night of March 23rd in 1998 at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. Good Will Hunting walked in with 9 nominations. Matt was nominated for Best Actor and for Best Original Screenplay in the same year, joining a list of only 4 people in Oscar history who had ever pulled off that double nomination. The other names on that list were Charlie Chaplin, Orson Welles, and Sylvester Stallone. Robin Williams was nominated against Robert Forster, Anthony Hopkins, Greg Kinnear, and Burt Reynolds. He had been nominated 3 times before in the Best Actor category for Good Morning Vietnam, Dead Poets Society, and The Fisher King, and all 3 times he had gone home empty-handed. When Mira Sorvino opened the envelope and called his name that night in March, Robin walked to the stage and gave one of the most beloved acceptance speeches in modern Oscar history. He thanked everyone. He thanked Matt and Ben, joking that he still wanted to see some identification because he could not believe 2 men this young had written something this good. He thanked Gus Van Sant for being so subtle he was almost subliminal. He thanked his wife, Marcia, who he said lit his soul on fire every single morning. And then he thanked his late father, who had once told him that if he wanted to be an actor, he should at least also have a backup profession, like welding. A short while later, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau opened the envelope for Best Original Screenplay and called the names of 2 Boston boys who had spent 5 years in conference rooms being told they were nobodies. Ben was 25 years old. Matt was 27. They thanked Harvey Weinstein. They thanked Gus Van Sant. They thanked their mothers, who were their dates that night. And they thanked Robin Williams for delivering their lines the way no other actor on earth could have. Matt has talked about going home that night, sitting alone with his trophy in his hands and being unable to sleep. He looked at the gold figure for a long time, and then he had a thought that has stayed with him ever since. He thought, "Thank God I never had to ruin anyone to get this." He had won the highest writing award in cinema before he was 30, and he had done it alongside his best friend, and he had done it because a man named Robin Williams had said yes to a script that nobody else in Hollywood believed in. What none of them knew on that bright March night was that they had only 16 years left with Robin. What none of them could have predicted was that the disease that would eventually take him was already beginning to move through his brain, silently, undiagnosed, and far too patient. The disease they could not see. Robin Williams died on the morning of August 11th in 2014 at his home in Paradise Cay, California. He was 63 years old. The cause was self-inflicted death. The world stopped for a day, and the grief that poured out for him surprised people with its depth. He had always seemed too alive to ever stop being alive. What the autopsy revealed in the weeks that followed changed the entire conversation about who Robin had been at the end. He was suffering from diffuse Lewy body dementia, a devastating neurological disease that the neuropathologist who examined him later called one of the worst cases he had ever seen. Lewy bodies were spread across nearly every region of his brain and brainstem, with a particularly heavy concentration in the amygdala, the part of the brain that governs fear and emotional regulation. He had been misdiagnosed with Parkinson's disease only a few months before his death. The truth was that he had been losing himself slowly for years, and nobody around him had been able to give a name to what was happening. His widow, Susan Schneider Williams, became the public face of Lewy body dementia awareness in the years that followed. She wrote a now-famous editorial in the journal Neurology titled "The Terrorist Inside My Husband's Brain." She narrated a documentary called Robin's Wish that brought the disease into mainstream conversation for the first time. She has said that Robin had been aware of his own mental disintegration and that the pain of watching himself slip away had been more than any human being should have to carry. Matt's official statement in the hours after Robin's death was short and unguarded. He said Robin had brought so much joy into his life and that he would carry that joy with him forever. He called Robin a beautiful man. He said he had been lucky to know him and that he would never, ever forget him. Ben Affleck wrote his own brief tribute on social media that day, thanking Robin simply for his friendship and for what he had given the world. In the years since, Matt has done something quiet and personal that almost nobody asked him to do. He has taken his daughters to the bench in the Boston Public Garden where the "It's Not Your Fault" scene was filmed. His children were too young at first to have ever seen the movie. They did not know what the bench meant. Matt sat there with them anyway, and he thought about Robin for a while. In the summer of 2024, an artist approached Matt with a proposal. The artist wanted to install a permanent bronze statue of Robin Williams on that exact bench, in the same posture, so that anyone in Boston who felt alone could go and sit beside him. Matt fell in love with the idea immediately. He told a journalist named Jake Hamilton during a press tour that he hoped the city would let it happen because if there was anyone in the world who would have loved being a permanent companion to lonely people in a public park, it was Robin Williams. The statue has not yet been built. Municipal red tape has slowed the process. But there is a different kind of monument that has now been built in Robin's honor, and on the night of April 27th, his 3 children placed it in the hands of the 2 men whose lives he had once saved. The circle finally closes. Zach, Zelda, and Cody Williams stood on the Fort Mason stage and looked at Matt and Ben in their San Francisco Giants caps, and the moment was almost too clean to have happened by accident. The children of the man who had said yes were now thanking the men whose careers their father had launched. The award they were holding had been created in their father's name by an organization their father had once supported, and it was being placed into the hands of 2 men who would not have careers without their father. Matt took the microphone and said something that captured the entire arc of the story. He told the audience that the moment Robin had read the script and decided to do the movie, every single problem they had been fighting for 5 years simply went away. The studio had been full of notes. There had been resistance about the script, about the casting, about every detail. The instant Robin said he liked the script the way it was, the studio said they thought it was great too. That was it. That was the whole turning point. One man saying yes had erased 5 years of being told no. Ben took the microphone next, and what he said is the line that will probably outlive every other line said about Robin Williams in his absence. Ben called Robin the person who had made the most meaningful impact on their professional lives, full stop, with no qualification, and without whom so many of the dreams they had ever had as boys in Cambridge would simply not have come true. That is the truth Matt Damon has been working towards saying for nearly 30 years. It is not the Oscar performance, extraordinary as it was. It is not the improvised line that made him grab a director by the shoulders. It is not the laughter that rolled through a tired film set in the middle of a long afternoon. It is the deeper thing underneath all of it. It is the quality of attention Robin Williams brought to the people around him. It is the way he could look at 2 young men sitting off to the side of a camera and understand exactly what they needed to hear. It is the way he walked over and put his hands on their heads and told them they were not a fluke. Some debts can never really be repaid. But you can show up. You can stand in a room. You can wear the wrong baseball cap for one night because the man you loved a different city. You can take what someone's children place in your hands, and you can let them see in your face that their father's kindness is still alive in someone he once touched, all these years later. That is what Matt Damon and Ben Affleck did on the night of April 27th. And that is the truth they had been building toward all along. What is your favorite Robin Williams moment or performance? Drop it in the comments below. We would genuinely love to read them.